The most powerful empaths alive often walk the most solitary roads, and the world has never once offered them an honest explanation for why. This isn't about being unlikable. This isn't about being broken or difficult or too much for people to handle. This is about something far deeper, something that most people will never understand, and something that the empath themselves has spent years trying to make sense of in the quiet corners of their own mind. The empath has sat in rooms full of people and still felt completely, devastatingly alone. They have had people around them, acquaintances, co-workers, even individuals who called themselves friends, and yet something inside the empath always knew the truth. The connection wasn't real, the depth wasn't there, and no matter how many people were present, the empath was still, in some fundamental way, alone in the crowd. Here's what most people don't understand about the empath. The very gift that makes them extraordinary is the same gift that makes genuine friendship feel almost impossible to find. The empath doesn't experience people the way most others do. When the empath enters a room, they don't just see faces, they feel energy. They sense what's underneath the words someone is saying, the grief behind the smile, the anxiety beneath the laughter, the loneliness hidden inside someone's performance of happiness. The empath reads people on a frequency that most individuals don't even know exists, and that is not a flaw. That is a rare and extraordinary ability. But here's where it becomes complicated. When someone can feel everything, when someone can sense the truth beneath every surface, ordinary friendship becomes almost unbearable. The empath has sat across from someone who was telling them one thing while radiantly broadcasting something entirely different. The empath has felt the insincerity, the hidden agenda, the shallow interest, the transactional nature of the relationship that the other person had dressed up in the language of closeness. And it isn't that the empath is paranoid. It isn't that they are imagining things or projecting. It is that they are right. The empath's perception is accurate, and accuracy at that level of depth is profoundly isolating. Drop a comment below if the empath's story sounds familiar, if this is already hitting somewhere real. This is so specific to genuine empaths, and it goes deeper still. The empath does not experience loneliness the way other people do. For most individuals, loneliness is the absence of people. For the empath, loneliness is the absence of realness. The empath could be surrounded by dozens of people and feel utterly starved of truth, of depth, of genuine soul-to-soul contact. Because what the empath is looking for in a friend isn't just someone to pass time with. The empath is looking for someone who can go all the way down, into the dark, into the complex, into the layered and sometimes uncomfortable terrain of real human experience. And those people are rare. Those people are genuinely rare. The empath has probably never heard anyone put it this way, but the truth is this. The empath's emotional depth sets a standard that very few people in the world are actually capable of meeting. Not because other people are bad, not because other people don't care, but because most people have not done the inner work. Most people are still operating on the surface, still performing, still numbing, still running from the very depths that the empath lives in every single day. And when the empath tries to reach out across that gap, they feel the distance. They feel how far apart they are, and eventually, quietly, they begin to pull back. Not out of arrogance, out of exhaustion, because here's the cost of the gift. And this is where it gets really interesting. The empath doesn't just feel their own emotions. The empath absorbs the emotions of everyone around them. When the empath is in a relationship or a friendship, they are not just managing their own inner world. They are carrying the emotional weight of the other person as well. The anxiety, the unprocessed pain, the suppressed anger, the grief the other person hasn't even acknowledged yet. The empath feels all of it. And most people have no idea they're doing this to the empath. Most people have no idea that their unresolved energy is being carried by someone else entirely. The empath goes home after spending time with a so-called friend and feels wrecked, depleted, foggy, heavy in a way that takes days to shake. And for years, the empath may not have understood why. They may have blamed themselves, thought they were antisocial, thought something was wrong with them, thought they were failing at something everyone else seemed to do with ease. But nothing was wrong. The empath was simply running an extraordinary amount of energetic data through a system that was never designed to operate at such intensity without rest, without boundaries, without someone who could reciprocate the depth. And this is the hidden truth that the world never tells the empath. The solitude is not a punishment. The solitude is a protection. What the world calls strange, the universe calls necessary. The empath's tendency to pull away from shallow connections, to retreat from draining people, to choose silence over forced companionship, that is not isolation. That is discernment. That is the soul doing exactly what it needs to do to survive in a world that does not yet understand what the empath is carrying. Let it be known in the comments if this is making something click that has never clicked before. Here's what most people don't understand about the empath who seems to have no friends. They are not lacking connection. They are protecting the quality of their connection. The empath would rather have one person in their life who is genuinely real than 100 people who are just filling space. The empath would rather sit in their own silence than drown in the noise of relationships that cost more than they give. That is not a deficit. That is a standard. That is the empath knowing, even if they couldn't always articulate it, that their energy is sacred and that not everyone deserves access to it. The empath has been told they are too sensitive, too intense, too much. They have watched other people form easy friendships and wondered what is wrong with them, why it has always been harder, why connection has always come with such complexity. But the answer was never that the empath was broken. The answer was that the empath was operating on a completely different level, a level most people don't even have the capacity to reach. The empath wasn't too much. The other people were simply not enough. Not enough depth, not enough honesty, not enough willingness to go to the places that the empath lives in as a matter of course. And here's where the reclaiming begins. Because the empath who finally understands this, truly understands it, stops shrinking. They stop apologizing for needing depth. They stop forcing themselves into friendships that leave them hollow. They stop mistaking the absence of many for the absence of something good. The empath begins to see their solitude differently, not as a wound, not as evidence of failure, but as a temple, a sacred space they have built without even realizing it, a space where only the real, the genuine, the truly worthy are ever invited in. And when the empath begins to own their sensitivity, not as a burden, but as a frequency, something extraordinary starts to happen. The right people begin to appear, not many, but real. The empath starts to attract the other rare ones, the deep feelers, the quiet warriors, the people who have also spent their whole lives looking for someone who could actually see them. These connections, when they arrive, are not like anything the empath has experienced before. They are the kind of friendships that feel like coming home, like finally exhaling after years of holding breath. This is what happens when the empath stops trying to fit into a world that was built for surface living and begins to own the depth they were always meant to inhabit. Like this video if this is the empath story, if this is the truth they have been living without the language to explain it. The empath who has walked through life feeling friendless, feeling like something was missing or wrong or out of reach. They were not being left behind. They were being prepared. Every shallow connection that fell away was the universe clearing space. Every draining friendship that the empath finally walked away from was an act of spiritual self-preservation. Every moment of solitude was the empath being held in a frequency that was protecting them, refining them, getting them ready for the connections that were actually meant for them. Because powerful empaths do not need many friends, they need the right ones. And the right ones are the ones who can handle the full weight and beauty of everything the empath is, the depth, the intensity, the raw honesty, the extraordinary sensitivity that makes the empath one of the rarest kinds of people alive. The empath was led here for a reason. This content did not find them by accident. Something in them needed to hear this today. Needed to finally have someone look at the loneliness and say, that is not what it looks like. That is not absence. That is power. Anyone this resonated with, claim it in the comments. Let it be known. Drop a line below and say, I am the empath. Because the empath who sees themselves in this video deserves to be seen. Fully, completely, without apology. Subscribe for more content like this, because the empath's journey is just beginning, and every video is another step into the fullness of who they were always meant to be. The empath doesn't need the world to understand them. The empath just needed to understand themselves. And that understanding, it changes everything.